Hey everybody, welcome to Joy Hub. We're Barry and Tracy. It's actually been a while since we've done one of these videos.
Yes.
In fact, if you haven't seen it, go check out our welcome video to learn more about Joy Hub and who we are and what we are seeking to do. But we are seeking to help leaders, teams, and couples journey into deeper joy. And I know you've had something on your mind for us to talk about today, so I want you to take the lead.
Yeah, I thought today we could just talk back and forth, just kind of casually about this idea of self reflection
Okay.
and taking time, in some way, shape, or form. It could be weekly, it could be monthly. Some people might even do it daily to self reflect
Mm.
on what things are going well and what things maybe aren't going well.
I
And
like it.
I know sometimes that idea of self reflection can be scary,
Yeah.
to look a little deeper into why we do the
Yeah.
things we
What's
do.
what's really in there? What motives are behind the things we're doing?
Right. And I think we can just get into patterns of just like day to day life, like just the next thing, the next thing.
Mm-hmm.
But what happens is when we don't reflect and try to look back on why did we make a decision, like what are the things that went really well, or what are the things I really maybe didn't handle well, then we
Mm-hmm.
just get into this pattern of repeating things that maybe aren't the best things to repeat, and then maybe not repeating the things that were wins for us. So I think one of the first points of self-reflection that I want us to kind of talk about is it gives a fresh perspective, or like a
Mm-hmm.
new look at um, how we can improve, or things that maybe we you know are doing well. It just gives us kind of a fresh perspective of how we're really doing.
Mm-hmm. It's
Any
good.
thoughts on that one? Fresh perspective.
Yeah. I mean, I think you said it well in that, especially as leaders, we're often only thinking about the next, and we want to be forward thinkers, and we do want to anticipate, but in reflection, it really is the invitation to look back and get better. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, it's a unique thing among leaders to do.
Right. And I know we were recently at a conference where someone explained how what they do with self reflection is they take their calendar
Hmm.
and kind of incorporate that into self reflection. So I don't know if it would be the day before or the week before or even the month before. You kind of look at your calendar and you think about key conversations or key
Yeah.
moments, and you reflect on those. And I thought that was a new way to um, think of how to have a fresh perspective on life. The second thing is, I think it just helps us understand ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I think we're kind of afraid to take a deep dive into our tendencies in life. And we all have them. We all have areas that are obvious to other people, but maybe are not obvious to ourselves. Like, one of my tendencies is, because I like to verbally process, I tend to interrupt. And so that's a tendency that, just because it happens, I can take moments to reflect back on when are the moments when I tend to interrupt, and how
Mm-hmm.
can I maybe in the coming weeks not interrupt.
Yeah, and I think there's going to be some things we aren't aware, no matter how frequently we
Mm-hmm.
reflect. They're going to remain blind spots until we ask others, "What's it like to be on the other side of me? What is it like?" As we've talked about recently in my organization, what's it like to live in my wake? And so I don't know, that's probably a conversation for another
Yeah,
day. But even again, the best self-reflectors can miss some things.
right. And I think another thing self reflection helps us do is to remember, like, what are our core values, like what is really
Mm.
important. And so we're not just like doing the next task or just trudging through life. Like, are we living according to our core values? Like, one of my core values is to try to be other centered. And
Mhm.
even just last night I was reflecting on, because we were at a social interaction, how often was I other centered? Like, a lot of people ask me questions, but did I spend a lot of time
Mm.
asking questions? And it made me think of, we have a social setting coming up even tonight, and I want to be more other centered. And because I reflected on that, interaction, not that I did anything wrong, but I
Mhm.
want it I want one of my core values to be other-centeredness, and so when I interact with people, I want to just ask more questions. That was,
Hmm.
kind of a tip that came out of
Yeah, I
self-reflection
think
for
that's
me.
yeah, I think that's good. Like to replay, to go back and almost be as best you can be an objective third party, looking back and saying how did I relate in that situation? How could I have related better in a more other-centered way? So I
Yeah.
love where you're going with this.
Yeah, you can even reflect on, like, if one of your core values is to be very present for our kids. Our kids are out of the house now, but I know that was a core value. You can look at your calendar and say, "Am I living in line with my core values?"
Yeah.
That's another one. And I think that comes to the last point I was going to make on why it's worth investing in the time of self reflection is it helps us grow and grow not only personally, because of the examples I've given, but professionally. And I know this is a big part of what you do in your job. And so, can you share a little bit about
Yes.
that?
So I work with Christian business owners, and one of the big commitments we have is once a month pausing and self-reflecting and even self-assessing. And we look at our personal lives as it relates to our faith, as it relates to our marriages and parenting, and even in some cases grandparenting, and how is that going? And then core areas of our businesses or nonprofit organizations that we're leading. And again, sadly, that's a unique thing for leaders of that capacity to actually pause
Mm-hmm.
and not only take maybe 15 or 20 minutes to look back on the previous 30 days, but to then get together with a group of, maybe 3 or 4 other people
Mm-hmm.
and talk about that and process it out loud and ask for um, help, ask for just them to be a soundboard. Hey,
Yeah.
are there areas where I've missed it somewhere, or even just have people celebrate? Some of self-reflection is, wow, I really am growing, I'm being
Yes.
transformed.
Yeah.
And to have other people in a circle to celebrate those times with us is also really important. So I love doing that as part of Iron Forums.
Yeah. And I love a quote I was reading as I was thinking through this idea of self reflection is what we don't reflect on, we repeat.
Mm.
And so just taking time, I think, to just assess, like, how am I doing?
Hmm.
What are my values? How am I growing? It made me think of like just being stuck in quicksand, like we're not reflecting, we're not really moving
Mm.
forward. And sometimes that requires being honest about areas that we need to grow in, but also taking the time to celebrate, like, hey, I did go through a whole meeting and not interrupt, or I was other centered. So celebrating,
Yeah.
but just I think it can just really help us grow as couples and even grow personally and professionally when we take time to self-reflect.
Awesome. Awesome. So why don't we go ahead and anticipate the next one? We'll talk a little bit more about blind spots and bringing others
Yes.
into kind of this process
I
and
like
learning
that.
about ourselves.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks for tuning in. As always, if you would love to interact with the video, it sure would help us also to subscribe and pass it on to others. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next time.
Thanks.